Designer Phil Walker Harding makes games that are straightforward and easy to learn, and Monolith, which was released in November 2022 by Simon, fits those principles perfectly, even down to the now standard 1-2-3 explanation of the game on the back of the box. Pick a stone, put it in your Monolith, score points. There's a bit more to the game than that, so let me show you how it works. Here are the components for Monolith, mostly set up for a 2-player game. You have a central board that is for 1 to 2 players on one side and 3 to 4 on the other. You put out tokens based on the number of players in the game. You put out plastic pieces at random by dumping them all in the box lid and drawing them, placing them out in a circle. The pieces come in 5 colors and they are in various polyomino shapes. Each player gets a player board that shows 4 of the 5 colors. You can shuffle them, hand them out at random from under the table, what have you, so that each player gets one. And you shuffle the structure cards and put out one of those, and now you're set to play. On a turn, you're going to take one of 2 actions. You can take a prophecy board from the outer perimeter of the board and place it on your player board, or what you do more frequently is move the crystal 1 to 4 spaces and take the stone at that space. So I can move the crystal here, take this block, and I can either keep the block or throw it out of the game and take a 1x1 block of the same color and add that to my structure. Mostly you want to take this block. You're going to put it in your grid. You can put it however you wish, as long as you abide by the lines and don't go outside and don't have overhangs, sort of standard gamey stuff. I put it like this. You can rotate your board to look at it at whatever angle you want. You are trying to build things to match the structure here in order to get structure points. You're also trying to complete levels, and you are trying to make good prophecies about what you are going to build. After you draw, pick a piece at random, reach in the box, put something out, next player goes. You often want to pick bigger pieces because they're going to cover more space, which will fill up your monolith faster. Not necessarily, but you might. Again, looking at what's here, what you're trying to build, you are trying to build a structure that has nothing, or at most height 1 in these spaces and 2 or more in these spaces. And again, you can rotate your board as you wish relative to this, or just how you're viewing it to see what's best for you. So you're going to keep taking turns trying to build things. Let's go here. I'm going to put this here on this turquoise side of my board. Draw something else. And we continue going. If you take a prophecy token, then you slot it in on the edge of the board that you wish, and that is your entire turn. You continue play. As soon as you have filled in a level, obviously this is not quite legal play, but let's just go for it. All right, I've completed a level. You take the highest level token available. So if I'm the first one to do so, I get this 10 token. That's 10 points for me. If I keep building and I manage to complete this structure here, where it's at most 1 tall in these spaces and 2 or more in these spaces, then I get the highest available structure token. So 10 points. The prophecy comes into play only at the end of the game. So I'm trying to continue to build, possibly have stuck myself a little bit by making holes. You have to work around everything. You are trying to manage lots of different stuff. Trying not to destroy things as you're putting them out. And you keep going until, in a 4-player game, someone has completed a 4x4x4 block. And in a 3 to 4-player game, a block that is 4 wide and 4 deep, but only 3 levels high. As soon as someone has done that, the game ends at the end of the round. You have a first player marker, so you can keep track of who went first. Everyone gets the same number of turns, and then you score points based on the level tokens you've collected for completing levels, the structure token if you got that, and prophecy tokens if you have successfully built your structure so that it shows as many colored blocks as you prophesized. So if I have at least 10 black here, I get 10 points. At the moment, I have 9. Maybe I end up throwing another piece away. Of course, I have not put out any more. If I throw another piece away, I'm just going to keep pulling pieces at random until I get something. There you go. Put that there. And now I've got 10. I would score those 10 points. If I had an 11, I would get nothing. If I had 9, I only get 9. So you're trying to choose prophecy tokens so that you can maximize the value you get as long as you actually succeed in getting that. You do not score for, or rather a block does not count if it's not on that facing wall. So this black one here does not count because it's not on this wall, it's one back. So you have to build properly to maximize the certain faces, but of course, as you build one face, you are necessarily impeding upon other faces. If I'm going to have a black block in each of those spaces in this corner, well, it's going to be black over here as well, which means it's not going to be white, which means I can have at most a very low prophecy score here. It's tough to maximize everything. And that's the gist of the game in general. It's tough to both build the structure and complete levels and do good prophecies because you have blocks coming up at random, other people are taking them. You have to fit everything in nicely, not to leave holes behind while you're racing in order to finish that monolith first so that other people have to stop building and can't earn points for whatever they're trying to do. And whoever ends up with the most points wins. I played Monolith 4 times on a review copy from Simon, twice with 2 players and once each with 3 and 1. Now the solitaire game works pretty much the same as the multiplayer game in that you're drafting blocks and building monolith and scoring points for levels and prophecies and the structure. But what differs is that you set up the game board with prophecy tokens all the way around the perimeter, and each time you draft a block and add it to your monolith, you must remove a prophecy token from play. You just discard it. And that is now the clock for the game, and when the prophecy tokens run out, then the game is over. Whenever you take a prophecy token yourself, well, that's also ticking down the clock. So you have a limited amount of time in which to do everything. You have no opponents, so you have more time in general to puzzle out what you want to do, to look at the pieces out there and try to imagine how everything is going to fit together to complete a level and work towards prophecies and build the structure available, and no one can interfere with taking anything out there. It's all up to you to figure it out. You might want to take the largest blocks possible because you don't have much time in which to do things, but you have to go with whatever is available. And things will be replaced at random as you take each piece, you draw a new one out, and maybe that adjusts your puzzle for how you want to put everything together. And when time runs out, you tally up your score and then you look at the chart and the rules to see, were you terrible, awesome, how does it work out? There you go. That's your rating, is just this measure on the chart for how it works. And the gameplay experience is like the multiplayer one because that is also a fairly solitaire-ish experience. Like many other games on the market these days, the interaction in Monolith comes through a shared drafting from a common pool and competition over shared goals. That's it. You're building up your own thing, but I don't really affect you so much. I mean, I may take the piece you want, but sometimes it's just incidental. I'm just doing my thing, and if I happen to hurt you, it was probably an accident. I didn't mean to do it because I want to maximize what I'm doing. The experience changes a bit, of course, in a 2-player game because it's just me and you, and if I can hurt you, ideally that's helping me at the same time. And the experience is much more patchwork style in a 2-player game because you have more control over what everyone is, or what each of you is doing. When I move the crystal, I know you can take one of the next 4 pieces. Or you take a prophecy token and pass and then put that option back on me. If you want something that's 5 pieces down the line, well, then you want to throw it back in my face and maybe make me move, and then you get the thing you really want. But I know that, and I can take a prophecy token. So there's a bit of gamesmanship, but when you add that third player, that kind of goes out the window, and I feel much more like I'm just competing against myself, and it doesn't really matter what the other people are doing. Prophecy tokens are disappearing, and pieces are disappearing, but I don't have much control over any of that. And I'm just working much more tactically with what's available for the immediate goals, because I have very little control on what's happening. So it feels like many other games in that the interaction is minimal. It's this sort of distance interaction, this isolated feel where, sure, I'm with other people, but we're not competing in this same space for this one thing. We're not building something up, or my build does not affect where you're building, and so on. I feel like I've played a lot of these games recently. It's just a very common style in the marketplace these days. I played spots recently where you're drafting actions in order to roll dice and complete your own dogs, all working on your own dogs while you're just drafting actions. Or village rails where you're drafting cards, and there's goal cards as well that you can buy from a shared line. Or Queensland where you're building up your own farm, drafting tiles, trigs, which I love in general, but it's, again, that same style where you're drafting cards from shared decks, and otherwise you each have your own hand and your own goals, and what you're doing doesn't affect anyone. Cascadia was, of course, a huge hit and a Spiel des Jahres winner, and it's very much that style of play as well, where I'm drafting something and maybe I take what you want, but it was not my intention, probably. We're just at the table playing something, but we're not going head to head and really battling over something. It's much more of a pacific feel of doing your own thing. And it's just common these days and what people are into. I prefer much more like fighting over this shared space or resource or whatever it is, and my play really interacting or having more of an impact on what you're doing directly. But that's just a trend for a lot of things these days. What's also different too is the playing experience seems the same no matter the player count. Like, you're roughly going to end up with the same point total regardless of the number of players because of the way the scoring is designed. Let me show you. The game board is double-sided, with this being the 1 and 2 player side and this the 3 and 4 player side. And you are going to place out tokens based on the player count. So with 4 players, you fill up everything. But with 3 players, you're going to leave certain spots blank. So the structure is only going to be 10, 8, and 8 points, not 12. That's not available. So there's a very small difference between you being first or second or third. Of course, if you don't get it at all, that's a bigger difference. You're going to put out tokens here, 10, 9, 8, but not this 8, and 7, but not that 7, and 6, 6, and so on. You leave out 1, 5. So you have points, but they sort of scale down roughly the same. If you want to think of in the 4-player game, if everyone gets their first level sort of in a row, you're pulling out these, and the next 4 are getting these. And in a 3-player game, that's not there. So the first 3 players are getting these, the next 3 players are getting these. So it's kind of the same scoring as you work your way through the levels. And again, there's not that much difference. So you've got this game where the points, individual points matter, but things don't scale a lot in terms of the impact of what you're doing. You have 1 8 prophecy token, but not 2. You have 1 7 token, but not 2. So again, there's the choices available to you seem like your actions have less impact because there's less difference in how things are going to be scored. I imagine that's all intentional. That is the way that the designer and the publishers want it to happen. You want things to feel roughly the same, which is why in a 3 and 4 player game, you only build up 3 levels tall. In a solitaire game and a 2-player game, you build 4 levels tall. I imagine that's just a constraint on the number of blocks available, and you want to give people the chance to complete a monolith. There's just not enough pieces to really work out a complete monolith with 3 and 4 players. And rather than add more pieces, you put in this height restriction, so then all the structure cards are made so that it works, whether you're going towards maximum 3 height or 4 height. So here it's 2+ and 0, 1 for the shrines. Or here 3+, where of course in a 3 and 4 player game, that would be exactly 3. Or it goes up higher. So the choices are all made so that it works with either height, and yet it feels like an sort of arbitrary decision to limit it rather than allowing for a range of results based on the number of players who are actually there. So in the solitaire game, you're going to put out all the prophecy tokens, but you put out only 6, 8, 10, and 16. Whereas with 2 people, now you're going to put out a 7 and a 9 and so forth. And so again, sort of the same-ish. Leave the 16 empty. So everything is scaled so that it sort of works out the same. It's also, I can see why you have tokens on here, right? You have the issue of adjusting the actual points available based on the players at the table, but it also gives you something to hold and be like, this is mine. I'm building my own monolith, and now I actually have my own points, and I have my own prophecy token, and whatever is going on here, I'm building up my own thing, which is off camera, so you can't even see it at the moment. All right, I've got my own thing, whereas I typically like the shared experience. So I'd rather have it where I know that these are the points available, and I put down my token, and someone else puts down their token, and so on. And so you're fighting more. You need to do this on 3-player side, right? You're fighting more directly, and you can see what other people have done. All right, if I got this, it shows I'm ahead here. I've gotten lots of stuff before anyone else has, and maybe other people then need to go higher on the prophecy and try to score points that way and make up for it. Here, the prophecy would work a little different. You'd have a token that's blue, then with a secondary color, so it'd be like blue and teal or blue and orange or something to show what side you're prophesizing. I don't know. Maybe this works better having this here so you can see directly as you rotate this. But I want that shared space. But again, personal preference. I've done lots of videos praising Reiner Knizia's designs, and one of the things that I'm most impressed with about a Knizia game is that it often feels very different based on the player count. The actual experience of the game and the strategy for what you want to do changes based on how many other people there are at the table. The rules stay the same, but your incentives for doing things differ because now there's less competition, there's more resources, there's all sorts of changes that happen, and nothing changes with the rules or the points. This isn't the case for all Knizia designs, but it's true for a lot of them, and it creates a different feeling, almost like different games based on the player count, and you might prefer one player count very much so over another because of the different feels of the design. I remember when Amun-Re came out in 2003, and everyone said, no, it's a 5-player game only, because only in the 5-player game are all of the territories used. If you're not familiar with Amun-Re, I'll include a link up here, but with 3 and 4 players, you don't use all the territories, and so it doesn't have the same feel, and people don't bid as much in the bidding round in order to get water, to cultivate everything, and so on. But for me, that's a plus. It changes the experience and the value of everything and what you're going to bid on different areas because of that difference, because you have fewer opportunities forbidding and jumping from one thing to another, it changes your behavior in the game. And here, Monolith doesn't do that. Here, it is very much designed to be the same no matter the player count. I might be overstating things, having played only 4 times and not even with 4 players yet, but this seems to be the nature of the design where it's all meant to roughly work out the same. And I would much prefer to have something feel very different, where you have a board that's the same no matter the player count. And in a 3 and 4 player game, maybe you just run out of blocks and you can't complete the monolith if you go for smaller pieces all the time. So it gives a different incentive for what you're trying to do. Perhaps, though, that would be a very unsatisfactory experience because people want to complete the monolith. If no one can ever complete it, maybe that leaves a sour taste. And then you have to put more blocks in the game, which increases the randomness and the colors that come out and the size of the pieces. And so again, it's creating this inconsistent feel for what the game is like. Whereas here, you have modifications in order to maximize the sameness or the playing experience, the same feeling across all the games. Which, okay, that could be a plus for some people. This speculation might be wildly off base, of course, based on 4 plays of a game, not even with the 4-player maximum, but this is all how it's coming across, looking at the design choices made and the experience that is trying to be delivered to you. You're working up a monolith, and no matter the player count, things work roughly the same, and it's roughly the same value of what you're going to get for the first level you complete, and the second level, and the third level, and so on. Unless, of course, you're terribly slow or terribly quick and people are making mistakes or passing or doing whatever. Again, maybe it's just an experience issue where I need more experience, but I thought I'd look at some of the design choices that are made here and then talk about them and how they feel during play and afterward. Maybe you have already played. You can talk about your experiences in the comment. Let me know where I'm completely wrong.